Hello boys and girls, good afternoon and welcome to Critical English for grade 7 to 8. Today we're continuing then narrative writing. Good afternoon, Shamar, Taisha and Alia. How are you guys? It's the end of the week. Yes, tomorrow begins our weekend. Are we excited? Yes. I know Alia has her own reservation. Every time I ask her about school, she has this expression like, okay, do I need to do this? Yeah? All right, so today, we looked at last class, we looked at narrative writing, yes? And we looked at how to write characters and how to build settings, yes? And today we're going to look at two more elements and then we're going to conclude narrative writing for now. All right, so today we're looking at plot and we're looking at conflict, okay? Now, I have designed a presentation, well, not designed, found this really cool presentation that captures everything that I really want to teach today. And so we're gonna focus on the screen for the purpose of the presentation. But what do you think the plot means? Because this is not the first time we're writing stories, yes? So, Taisha told me she's doing plot in school. So how about you start our discussion off? What do you think it means and how is it related to conflict?
Miss, I think the plot is about, it tells the story.
It tells how the story unfolds. Now, if you go home and you tell mommy, let's say mommy asks you to tell you about what happened at the session today, what structure would you tell her? Would you start from the end? No. Where would you start? From the beginning. And you sort of do what? Flow through the process, yes? So our stories follow a sort of similar pattern, yes? It starts with a beginning and then it flows and we have events unfolding. And when we have those events unfolding, we're looking at the plot of the story, how these events unfold. And now it's very important that we have a plot structure when we are writing our story because it helps us to keep in our mind the flow or the series of events that must happen so that our story can be carried out. Yes? All right, so let's look at what plot means, and then we're going to look at conflict. So the last part of the question you didn't answer, Taisha. We'll throw it to Shamar and see if Shamar can try it. Conflict, what do you think that means?
The disagreement between the characters.
Characters, yes. The disagreement between the characters. And do we have conflict in life?
Yes.
Yeah? Have you had any conflict this week?
Yes.
Yeah? Give us an example, Alia.
We had to do a group project.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that we could have started today, but nobody wanted to do that. They wanted to do it on Zoom online.
Mm-hmm. And you find that conflicting because you think you can save more time and get it done now rather than procrastinate and do it online. And then people don't show up, yeah? Because that's usually the contention. We're going to do it online, and then you know what? Half of the persons don't show up, and then they come and say, oh, you know what? What are their excuses? They had no
Internet.
They had no internet. Or the famous thing, they had what? And then they blame a certain company.
Blackout.
They had blackout, yeah? We had no internet or we had blackout. Famous excuse. All right, so the conflict is the disagreement between characters. And then there are different types of conflict. And we're going to look at that as the lesson unfolds. So we want to start off with exposition and what that is. And just let me go back because I think I pushed the lesson to go. All right, so exposition. So the plot has to begin, the story has to begin somewhere, yes? And this point that it begins, we reference this to mean the exposition. Now, what is the exposition? It's the part of the story that introduces the characters that we looked at, and we said the characters are who?
The persons are in the story.
All right, the person, animal, or thing in the story. And we looked at setting and we said what? Setting is the two W's. The something and the something. One tells us about
when
mm-hmm,
and where.
when and where. And when tells us about
Where it's taking place.
place, and where is place and when is time. All right, good. So this is the part of the story where we introduce our characters. We have an introduction of our setting, where it is, when it's happening, all right, and the problem or the conflict. All right, so this is what must happen at the beginning of our story. And then after we would have done that, we want to move on to our rising action. Now, there are two famous guys in history, Aristotle and Freytag. These are two guys who are responsible for what we're looking at, the plot, right? Aristotle was the more older one who said that, you know what, a story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end, all right? And then Freytag came along and said, you know what, you have your beginning, and you have your middle, and you have your end, but in order to get from your beginning to your middle, something has to happen here. Isn't that so?
Yes.
All right, and that's how we have the rising action, the part of the story that builds suspense as the problem gets worse. So we have all of those activities that lead up to, and what Freytag did was to rename, and so we're using his model to rename the parts of the plot line so that we have now the exposition, we have rising action that connects the exposition to the climax, which was once what? The beginning, middle, and end. And so now we have the rising action. So when we introduce our characters, we introduce our setting, where our stories is going to happen, when it's going to happen, who are going to be involved, right? And what is going to be the problem in the story. We have to get some activity leading them to that big thing that is going to happen, all right? And so those activities we call the rising action, all right? And then we move on to the climax. And this is the highest point of suspense, or this turning point in the story. So this is the part of the story. Have you ever watched a movie and then something is going to happen? So I'm going to use Alia's thing. She likes scary movie. And then, so the movie begins very spooky. All right? And then they go into this house and all of these things. And then it's like you're following them. You don't want to miss to see what would happen. And something appeared to them, right? And that's like the highest point. And then they got to fight and try to get away from this creature, all right? So the highest point of suspense in the story is considered the climax, all right? Or the point that we most enjoy, all right? Or we can talk about it in the way that the point where the character has to face his or her deepest fear, or they come face to face with the problem that they have got to solve, all right? So that point is what we refer to as the climax. And then the story can't just end just like that, right? Could it? No, it just can't end just like that. And has to have the following action. And these are events after the climax that lead to the end of the story. So after they would have engaged with this big monster, and then something happened, they finally defeat this monster, and what happened? The limping, going, and just, the movie wouldn't just finish like that, right? The limp and limp and limp, and then they go out like Resident Evil. Have you ever watched Resident Evil? No. Tell me one of the scary movies that you guys have watched. Probably that I don't know that I will know them though. What about Annabelle? I watch Annabelle? No. Or you don't watch scary movies, you just wanted to write some scary thing to mislead me.
No, I always watch 1, 2, but me, I don't do that.
1 or 2. All right. So we have to have an event, the events that bring the story down. All right? Because when it can't just happen from that high point and then just drop. All right? We have those activities that bring the story down. All right? And then as the story comes to a close, we have our resolution. And our resolution is the final outcome of the story. All right? Do we understand is it something difficult? No, it's not something difficult. And if we practice, we can write very good stories. Now, I want to do the other part and then I can give you the activity because they're sort of interlinked. Now, we want to look at conflicts. And we said what? I got to go back. We said that conflicts are, can you see? No, so I'll read for you because I think it's a little bit too small for you to be able to see. So the conflict is the problem that our characters face. Now, these conflicts can be one of two types. It can be internal, meaning that we can have our own conflicts. Have you ever had a time where let's say you're walking down the road and you see somebody's money fall out their pocket? What do? You pick it up and you give them. Do you do that immediately? No? What happens in a sort of split second? Uh-huh.
Yes, for me, I just be thinking, take the money or give it, take it.
Oh, good. And that is an honest opinion, right? Should I take it or should I just let them walk away and then just pick up it? But that is what we call internal conflict because it's a battle between you and your conscience. All right? So those conflicts that we have among ourselves, and we do. Do you have conflicts among yourself? Yeah? Think about when mommy say, go clean your bedroom, go something, and you sit there, meh, I really gotta do this. Do you have those moments? Yes. Then they say, go and get your book, exams are coming up. And you're like, probably could catch a 1 hour game show, Shamar? The gaming thing that you do on your phone, or if you watch a drama series, like okay, I can catch a last episode and then I'm gonna go and watch my and then I'm gonna do some studying, yeah. And then there is this little battle in your head, right, where you've got to go back and forth with yourself. Anytime you have to go back and forth with yourself to make a decision, those are what we consider internal conflict. All right? And then we have external conflicts, and these are conflict between a person or a character and an outer force. So we can control the external conflict. All right? So these can be in the form of, and we look at those, this is the internal conflict, when a character struggles to make a decision. All right? And it's interesting how we have those two things on our shoulders. Yes? The good angel and the bad angel. One telling you to give back the money, Miss Sion, Miss Samuel, and the other said, no, don't give it back. You can get a little spending money to do something, yes? And then you're back and forth. So you're struggling to make a decision. And when that happens, we refer to that as internal conflict. And then we have individual versus individual, or when you get into literature, you'll see man versus man, all right? And that's a conflict. An example of a conflict in that case would be the example that Alia would have given us earlier, where she wanted to do the assignment, but the members of the group, they want to do the assignment now. They want to put it off for later, and that sort of stemmed the disagreement, I assume. Yes? All right, so you probably don't bother with them. You're gonna get through it. All right, so those sort of conflicts, man versus man, is where we have conflict with another individual. All right, and then you have man, individual versus nature, or man versus nature. And these would refer to things of forces of nature. All right, whether those are hurricanes or volcanoes, things that happen as a result of some natural disaster, all right? And we don't really have anything. We're very fortunate in Guyana to not necessarily have to deal with a lot of natural disasters, right? We don't get hurricane or earthquake, fingers crossed, knock on wood, the old people say, right? And tornadoes and those other things. But when we look at the news, we see that there are countries and tsunamis and so that have to deal with those sort of natural disasters, right? And when that happens, it's a conflict, right? It's a problem for them because you're now doing what? You have to leave your space if you want to survive, right? We had a recent volcanic eruption a year ago somewhere across the Caribbean, and they have to leave, right? Leaving your home. And do you think it's easy to leave your home? Right? Just leave your home and up and go, right? That's not easy. All right, so anything that occurs naturally as a result of nature, that is what we refer to as an external conflict, an example of an external conflict, man versus nature or individual versus nature. And then we have individual versus society. What do you think this means? Shamar, can you think of an example where this type of conflict can be seen?
See, like with the press, with the president and the press, cause they're always there, like.
The expectations of society, right? The expectation of society. So they have their own expectation. It may not be something that you're accustomed to or something that you are in agreement with. And because of that, you can have what? Disagreement, all right? Or you can have problem. Let's say, for instance, how society view thin people as against how they view bigger people, right? Do they have the same perception? No. And so each group will have their own challenges as a result of society's perception, all right? If you're too skinny, they say you're maga and you're sick and all of these things. And if you're on the other spectrum now, they give you all sorts of names, all right? So the expectation of society can sometimes cause disagreement for us or for our characters because of our personal views. Make sense? All right. And then we want to move on to individual versus supernatural. And what do you think this means? Anyone? Supernatural. And there is actually a series titled Supernatural. Have any of you looked at it? No? All right, so y'all probably shouldn't look at it either. So when we talk about supernatural, we're talking about those things that are within our control, within the natural world. So what are some of our supernatural things that we talk about in our Guyanese Creole context? We don't know. What about old hag? Boogeyman, all right? So these supernatural, and then we have these movies with these big alien things, and so those are things that they're removed from the natural world, all right? So the aliens coming in, those are example of supernatural conflict, all right? Anything that is beyond the natural world that we can see, and things that we're accustomed to, all right? So when they interfere, we have a disagreement, and so we have a conflict between individual versus supernatural. All right, and then I want us to look at one example of a conflict, and you can tell me what type of conflict is shown here. I'm not sure if we can get the volume. Something is going off in 28 seconds. All right, so let's talk about that. What type of conflict do you think we saw there?
Man versus man.
Man versus man. In the cases we have presented two characters, right? Man versus man. Well, not man, because they're not necessarily man. It's animated and so on. All right. Good. So here is what I want for you to do for me. So do we think that we can have a plot line for what we just saw? Yes, it has a start where we saw where the short film was set, right? We were introduced to the character. What do you think the problem was?
The disagreement between them.
Why? What caused that disagreement? Pardon? The new car, and not just the new car. Like he wanted to show off this new car to his friend. He wanted his friend to see this new car, right? And then the friend got in, and everything seems to be going well for the friend, and not for him, right? Because what was the first thing that happened to him? He couldn't fix the seat belt, and then what happened? He tried to fix it. The door opened, and then it just went all the way downhill. What do you think would have been the high point of that?
When the car fell apart.
When the car fell apart? Would that be the high point? Like, where did it really went crazy?
Yes, when he gets stuck in.
In the engine, when he approached the engine, and then he fell into it, and things just went crazy from there. All right, because even he was up and down, and all around, right? And then he got back into the car, and did it finish there? No, he pressed something, and both of them went crazy in the car, right? And then finally, it seemed to be over. The suspense. So the climax was done, and then what was our falling action? Where he attempted to do what? To take the what do we call those what do we call the little mirror that allows you, the rear view mirror, and then it fell off, right? So he's like, get out, get out, get out, get out. So that's bringing the story down to a close. And what was the outcome? The car fell apart, right? When he drove off, the entire car fell apart. So when we can plot that out on our, map, all right? So this is what we look at our story. Now, if we're writing story, we want to make sure we have something like this, all right? We want to account for our, what will we put here? What will we put here? Our exposition, and then we account for what? Here, in these two boxes.
Where and when?
Not where and when. So our exposition would take into account what? Our characters, our conflict, yeah, the beginning of the conflict, the introduction of the problem, and something else. Characters and something that went hand in hand. Characters and the people, they must be somewhere and sometime.
Team? No, the Setting.
Good. So our exposition takes into account our characters, who, right? Who will be in the story? Where will they be? And when will the story be happening? All right? And what is the problem that will unfold in the story? So that will account for our exposition. And then, of course, we can't just jump right to the climax, can we? No, we must account for our rising action, and we can at least identify two rising action, two event that will help to lead up to the climax. And this is the biggest suspense. Our climax is the biggest suspense or the turning point in the story. And then, of course, we can't just drop to the resolution. All right, can we? No, we can't just drop to the resolution. We have to have something, an event that brings us down from the climax to the resolution, and that is called the falling action. And then, of course, the resolution, which is the outcome of the story. And here in this square box, we have the conflict. And when we talk about conflict, we must first identify what type of conflict we're going to have, all right? What type of conflict we're going to have, and what are the types of conflicts, the two major types of conflicts. External and internal. Internal meaning conflicts with me and Shamar, yes? No. Internal conflict means what? Me and myself. I'm having a difficulty making a choice. So when I'm doing that, it's a battle between these two little guys on my shoulder. One on the right saying doing the right thing, and the one on the left say, no matter what though. Just do what you gotta do. You can deal with the consequences later, yeah? Right? And sometimes we listen to the one on our left, when we should listen to the one on our right, especially when we have assignments and homework to do. Yes? Yes. And then we have the other type of conflict, which is our external conflict, and those can happen between who? Ourselves and man, society, supernatural, and nature. All right. So man versus man, or man versus self, or individual versus self. No, individual versus man, individual versus society, individual versus nature, and individual versus supernatural. So we've got to decide what type of conflict we want, and then we write out clearly the type of conflict. So that in our story, we're going to have a conflict of man versus man. And in this conflict, we'll use Alia's situation. Alia wants to get the work done today, but the group wants to put it off until the weekend. And we have to now develop a story to see how that unfolds. And our climax may very well be, you know what, over the weekend, nothing was done. And then she flares up in the group and get very upset and angry with everybody, and then leaves the group. And then Monday morning, she goes to the teacher and says, you know what, miss? I don't want to do group assignment. And this is why a lot of people don't like doing group assignment. Yes, because it's difficult, but you have to, because it teaches us how to work together and prepare us for the world of work. All right, so I hope, Alia, that your group really, really work with you, and that you guys are able to resolve your conflict so that you can have a successful outcome. And that is all the time we have for today. Thank you, guys. Please take your plot line home and continue. So your story should be going somewhere now, because you have learned how to do what? To describe your characters, to create setting. All right, create characters, create setting. We're now looking at the plot and the conflict. So now we can go about writing a perfect story, yes, along the narrative line. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Please stay tuned for math, and I will see you next Wednesday.
Good afternoon again, boys and girls, and welcome to Critical Mathematics. And you are aware of the last set of topics that we were doing is based on algebra. And could somebody please remind us on what we did at the last session?
We looked at the laws.
Laws, and which one of the laws we started with? Laws of
Multiplication.
laws of indices, dealing with, what's the first law? What is the first law we dealt with?
I think it was when dividing
Multiplying first.
was multiplying first.
When-
When multiplying numbers with the same base,
Base.
we
Right back the base.
Right back the base.
and is it add or
Other numbers.
add
And
the
add the powers. Fair enough. So if I give you an example, x, let's change the marker. X square multiplied by x square. If you notice, what I did with the x, I curved the x so that it will look a little different to our multiplication, right? That is equal to, what will we do first?
put back the x
The same base and
2
to
2
plus
plus
2.
plus 2. And we add the powers. So what would be our answer?
x
to the fourth
power.
X to the fourth power. And if we had to expand it, we would have had x multiplied by x, multiplied by x, multiplied by x. And if we count, we would have had 4 x's, right? So it would have been x to the fourth power. Great, so this is our multiplication. Okay, could you please remind me of the other one?
And dividing.
When dividing,
When dividing numbers with the same base, we subtract the base.
we subtract
Power.
the powers. So if we have an example, 5 to the third power divided by 5 to the second power, what do we do? 5, same base, 3
minus
minus 2. So we would have 5 to the,
You
could
could
put
put
5 alone or
you can put 5 alone. So you don't have to put 1, right? Because it's implied we're looking at 1, right? So great. So copy those two as our recap. And for today, we're going to be continuing with our laws of indices, including other laws into the two that you would have learned before.
I.
Great. Great, great. Great. So, I'm going to give you another law. And this law, we had a law of multiplication, a law of division, of indices. And we're going to do a law of the power 0. The power of 0. So for example, we have any number 8 to the 0 power. Any number to the 0 power is equal to 1. So let me show you an example. Let's say, actually, in one of our example at the last class, we actually did an example of this, but I did not make mention of it because I was waiting to see if anybody could have related it to this one. Let me give you an example. 2 to the 4th power divided by 2 to the 4th power. What is our base? 2. So we will have 2,
4.
4,
Sub minus
4.
4.
Right? 4 minus 4?
0.
0. So 2 to the 0 power is 2?
No.
What did I say about anything to the 0 power?
Is 1.
Great, it's 1. So let me show you the expansion of what we did. Remember, 2 to the 4th power is 2, multiply by 2, multiply by 2, multiply by 2. Agree? All over 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. What do we do now?
Cancel out.
Cancel. What into what?
2 into 2. 2
Uh-huh.
into 2, 1. 2 into 2, 1. 2, 1.
And we continue. So what do we have?
1.
1 by 1 by 1 by 1 is?
1.
1 by 1 by 1 by 1 is?
1.
Anything over itself is?
1.
Itself. So 1 into 1 is?
1.
So anything into the 0 power is?
1.
So even if you're not sure, why 2 to the 0 power is 1? And we have a 2 here. So if you do it in the expansion form, you will see how you got your 1. Right? So knowing it both ways can help you along the way. Okay, copy. It doesn't matter how big the number is. 1 million trillion to the 0 power is
1.
negative 400,000. Negative 2.7689 to the 0 power is
1.
anything. It doesn't matter what it is. To the 0 power is 1. And please forgive me for the marker because I'm realizing that the blues are very light.
I.
All right, great. So I'm going to take this. So I'm going to give one other example with our power. Let's go to number 2. Y to the 7th power multiply by y to the 4th power all over y to the 11th power. So you would notice that we're doing power of 0 and I'm giving you the multiplication and division, right? To get your answer. Okay, so what do I write here? When we multiply, what do we do?
We write the base.
Base and?
7 plus 4
Great.
plus 11.
Plus?
No.
No.
What do we do with 11?
Subtract.
Subtract 11, so we can do it one time. And remember, when we expanded 2 to the 4th power is 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. But should we have y by y by y by y by y by y by 11 times? No, we don't have to do that. So that is why we can do it this way. Good. So let me increase this one here. No, leave it. Yes. Y 7 plus 4
11.
minus 11. 11 minus 11.
0.
Anything to the 0 power is?
1.
Great. So we did the multiplication, the division, and the 0 power in 1. Because all of them will relate at some point in time. Do we understand this?
Yes.
Copy. So we have 3 laws there. The multiplication, the division of indices, and the power of using the power of 0.
I.
Great. So we're going to be stepping it up a little. So we're going to be including another law. Okay, great.
4, 5.
Great. So this law now, when I will put an example on the board, and you will tell me what you would have observed and what you think it's probably saying to you in terms of what law it might be. M to the second power to the second power. What would you want to call that? What law?
Law 1.
What about it?
Because it would be multiplying.
All right, because when we have a bracket and the number in front of the bracket also implies that we have to multiply, right? Great, you have to multiply the power, but it's not law 1, right? This is a power, and this power is raising to another power. So it's like the power of a power, right? Because we are raising this power to another power. So let's take, for instance, as Shamar would have said, the bracket implies that we would have to multiply. Agree. So we would have m to the second power multiply by the second power. So we have m to the fourth power. If we're to expand it, remember in the bracket what we would have. If we expanded in the bracket, what would we have? M times m in the bracket. And what the power means? We have to multiply it by itself. Right? So we have m times m multiplied by m times m. M times m multiplied by m times m. Because we multiply in one bracket by the other bracket. Right? So how many m's we have? 4. Remember when we are multiplying, we add the powers? So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so we will have m to the fourth power. Power raised to another power. Okay? Copy. So let's get one to work. Try working that for me, please. Thank you. Two to the third power raised to the second power. So let's work it together. What do I write?
2.
2.
3 times
3 times
2.
2. Agree? Two trees. Two trees.
6.
6. So we have the indices of 2 to the 6th power, but we can expand that to get the results, right? So 2 to the 6th power would be 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. That is just to show you the expansion, but we don't have to do that, right? Because we know we are aware by now this is what you're supposed to have. So we can calculate it without this part here. So for explanation's sake, 2 by 2,
4.
2 fours,
8.
8 twos,
16.
16 twos, 16 twos,
22.
32,
Get 32.
good.
Yes, my friend.
32 twos,
64.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm just asking. So we sure we clear here?
Yes.
So let's go again. 2 twos,
4.
4 twos,
8.
8 twos,
16.
16 twos,
32.
and 32 twos.
64.
64. Thank you. Expansion. Copy. We know when we are using the variable, those are the letters. There's no need for the expansion because you don't know the value of the letters. So your answer will remain with the variable and the power.
I.
Great. So what are the 4 laws we have so far?
Same.
First one is with
Multiply.
multiplication of indices. Second,
Subtract.
Divide.
division of indices. When we multiply, what do?
Add.
Add the
Powers.
powers. When we divide, what do we do with the powers?
Subtract.
Subtract the powers. But they must have
The
Same
same.
base.
the same base. Then we have power of 0, meaning that
Anything equal 0 is
equal 0
anything
With a
and
0.
with 0 power
Equals 1.
equal to 1. And then we have power of powers. 1 power raised into another power. Right? So we multiply the power. Great? Then we have negative power. Negative power actually speaks for itself. We have x to the negative 2. The negative power is actually the opposite of the positive. Because if we have x square, this is x square, right? So the negative power will give us is like the opposite or the coefficient. That means we are saying here that it will give you 1 over x to the 2nd power. So anything with a negative power, you will get a fraction. Or you could say fractional indices. Right? As long as it has a negative power, your answer will be in fraction, giving you back the power. A to the 3rd power, negative 3 power, is equal to 1 over a to the 3rd power. The only difference that I did here with when I divide the variable, or it could be the coefficient or whatever you have with a negative power, you do not put back the negative. Right? And we have 1 up here because if we know that there is an invisible 1 in front there, a value of 1, right in front. But we don't write it because if I write a 1 here, it's telling you the same thing. right? You will see the difference when I place another number there. So copy this one.
See, and so the answer would always be a fraction.
Yes. As long as it's a negative, it always have a fractional answer.
I.
Very good. So let's try 2 to the negative 3. What could I write? What do I write?
2 to the negative 3.
What do I write first?
Is it 1?
The 1 over 2 to the third power. But remember, the value, we know the value, right? So we can expand. So we can say, how many times we have to multiply 2 here?
3.
3. So 2 2s, 2 by 2,
4.
and 4 2s.
8.
So our answer will be
3.
good. Copy.
I.
So as long as you have a negative power, your answer will be in fractions. But you would not have a negative in the answer. Okay? Could I take this off?
Yes.
Have some space. So let me show you. Two x to the negative 2. Remember earlier, we didn't have a number. We didn't have a coefficient, right? So the negative belongs to the x only. The negative belongs to the x. It doesn't belong to the 2. So the fact is that it doesn't belong to the 2. We leave the 2 where it is. And it belongs to the x, so we take the x and we put it at the bottom. And it will give you your answer. So, let's recap. We had first law, multiplication. What do we need to know about the multiplication?
When we have the same base, we add it back.
We place it back.
We place it back, and we add the powers.
Yes, we add the powers. So that is for multiplication. What about the division?
When if I then numbers with the
Same base.
we place the number back and subtract the power.
And we subtract the power. Great. Then we have the power of 0. What does that imply to us?
Anything with the power of 0 equals to 1.
Great. Yes, any number, any variable with the power of 0, it is equal to 1. Right? Then we have the negative power. What could we say about this? The negative power gives us a fractional result. Meaning, if whatever the negative power is connected to will be in the fractional form. For instance, we have a coefficient and we have a variable. The variable has a negative power. The coefficient doesn't have that power. So we rewrite the coefficient back because we don't want to do anything with it. We don't want to divide it, right? And the variable with the negative power, we replace it as a fraction, making it a denominator, and the power becomes positive, right? So sometimes when you are doing the multiplication and the division, your answer can result in a negative power, right? So let's get that one just to wrap us up. For today, let's look at one with a negative. That will give us a negative. X to the 4th power divided by x to the 6th power. When we divide in the same base, what do we do?
Place it back.
Place the x.
That's straightforward.
What do I put here?
4 minus
4 minus 6. You have 4 and you owe 6. So what that means?
you have to pay.
You have to repay
But you have
what you still have owing?
2.
2. You still have 2 owing. That's a negative. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. So isn't this a negative power?
Yes. ma'am.
So now your answer, your final answer will become a fraction.
1 x. Yes, but that one was pretty much straightforward.
Yes. Alright, so for the laws of indices, we have the 4 laws: the multiplication of indices, the division of indices, the power of 0, and the negative power, which will result in a fractional indice. Right, so I would hope that you would have understood those 4 laws. You will put it into practice. So even when you are at school and you're being taught laws of indices, you will be at the top of your game and at the top of your class to ensure that you are there first to get it done, get it correct, and to be there to explain it to your peers. Right? So thank you very much again for your presence, and we do hope that we will see you at the next session next week, and do enjoy. Good afternoon.